Okay, this is the flipped classroom for poetry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a quick PowerPoint, and then I will also post it to the website, and then I'm going to show you briefly four documents that you're going to want to be familiar with in your notes when we come back and look at poetry. So, what is poetry? It is a kind of language that says more and says it more intensely than does ordinary language. It communicates information and is concerned with experiences. The thing to remember about poetry is that the poet has a very limited space in which to convey to us a huge experience. So when we look at a novel or a short story, there's a lot more space to give details. The poet doesn't have that. So every word, every syllable has an intention, and that's what we want to look at. Remember also that when a poet writes down a poem, they're talking about an experience or something that they noticed. Once that's on paper, it doesn't belong to them anymore. When we pick it up, it becomes ours individually. Two things we're concerned with poetry in our analysis is the metric form and the rhyme scheme. So rhyme and rhythm. The metric form is very mathematical. So if you're good at math, you'll get scansion pretty easily. If you are musical, you'll understand what the metric form means. So on the left side of this table, you have an example. Those are lines from poetry. And we have what's called foot names: iamb, trochee, anapest, dactyl, and spondy. And this has to do with the stressed and unstressed syllables. When we talk about these feet in adjective form, iamb means iambic, trochee is trochaic, anapest becomes anapestic, dactyl is dactylic, and spondy is spondaic. The foot numbers, how many of these feet are in a line? So monometer 1, dimeter 2, trimeter 3, tetrameter 4, pentameter 5, and hexameter 6. These are the main ones you're going to want to be familiar with, and you're going to want to know the name of the feet. The most important feet are the iamb and the anapest. So here's what it looks like. We have this first line, today the sun. And when we're talking about scansion and the metric form, it's a stressed and unstressed syllable. The stressed one would be like the hand clap. So today the sun. Think about how you would say this. Would you say today the sun, or would you say today the sun? So wherever you put the emphasis on, that's the stressed syllable. And this is how it would look if you did it scansion. So the U means unstressed and the slash is stressed. So the metric form or the rhythm of this line is today the sun. Daily went to. Would you say daily or daily? Daily went to. Intervene in the dark. So you're getting kind of the musicality of how things flow. It takes a lot of practice, so I don't want you guys freaking out. I can't remember how to do this. We're going to practice it a lot. It's not imperative to your analysis of a poem, but it helps if you talk about certain poetic elements, like the metric form. So once again, here is the table with the examples, the name of the foot, and the adjective form of the foot. So you see the way that they would be. And we just did today the sun, which is an iamb, which consists of unstressed and stressed syllables. And then daily went to the trochee, which is the other way, stressed, unstressed. Now we're going to look at an anapest. Multiple color of. Multiple color of. And the spondy, true blue, double stress, true blue. Again, don't freak out. We're going to practice this in class. If I were you, I'd look back through this and get the feel of it. Once again, here is the table with the examples and the name of the foot and their adjective form. Couple more poetic forms to pay attention to. The most important one we're going to look at is a sonnet. Know the sonnet. There are two types of sonnets, Shakespearean and Italian. The Italian is also known as a Petrarchan. Sonnet is made up of 14 lines, so if you get a poem on that AP test, count up the lines. If it's 14 lines, no matter what it looks like, it is a sonnet. And the sonnets are written in iambic pentameter, which means they're made up of 5 feet in the iambic style. So iambic is unstressed, stressed. So the sonnet has the rhythm dun 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 dun. Shakespearean sonnet has a rhyme scheme of A B C D C D E F G G. This is end rhyme, so the words at the end of the lines, this is the way they rhyme. And the GG is also known as a couplet. So again, if you see a poem, you count it up and there's 14 lines, then go and look at the last 2 lines. If the last 2 lines rhyme together, you have a Shakespearean sonnet. The Italian sonnet is divided into 2 parts, an octave and a sestet. So an octave, that's 8 lines, octo, and the rhyme scheme is A, B, B, A, B, B, A. The sestet, which is the last 6 lines, C, D, C, D, C, D, or C, D, E, C, D, E. Again, we're going to have a lot of practice with this, so don't freak out yet. The thing to remember about the Italian sonnet, the reason it's divided into 2 parts, which hopefully you already have caught on to that, is that there's going to be a shift in the poem. 2 more poetic forms for this PowerPoint, blank verse and free verse. Often confused, blank verse would be unrhymed iambic pentameter, which means there are no end rhymed words, but it does have a rhythm to it, the metric form. Free verse, it will have some form of rhyme, which probably would be consonants or assonance or onomatopoeia, something that sounds like it rhymes, but there won't be any rhythm. There won't be a metric form. Alright, and that's it for this PowerPoint. The next thing I want you to look at is this page called Poetic Devices. Go ahead and go through these notes. It talks about how to look at a poem. It talks about, right here, the sounds of words. This is very important to poetry, what it sounds like. The next part, sorry, I know you can't see all of it. There's practice here about scansion and how to scan things. Okay? Now you don't need to necessarily know any specific definitions, or not definitions, but etymology about where things come from, but just make sure you know what these terms are that you're going to see. Know the language we're going to be using. And again, this is posted to the website also under the Thanksgiving assignments. Arranging the words, so the way words are put in the poem are important, so make sure you understand that. And then it talks about, different types of different types of poems for you to look at. And we'll try to look at as many of these as possible. But again, our main focus is going to be on the sonnets. So right here you have Shakespearean and Italian, or Petrarchan, as I said. The Spenserian sonnet, it's just like Shakespeare, so we're not going to worry too much about that. Imagery, very, very important. You have here the senses. Remember we talked about how our senses are directly connected to our memories. That's how we have an experience with the poem. And then finally, very, very important, tone and mood. We know that tone is a buzzword for analysis and MOA. Alright, the next thing I want you to look at is how to explicate a poem. And this tells you how to break a poem down. So I'm not going to go through this, but read this paper, understand what you want to look at and how you want to look at those things. There's another paper up here for a half sheet. I'm going to give this to you when we get to class, but this is what we're going to look at when we go through each poem. So I don't need to read this to you, but these are the things you're going to want to look at. Alright, and then there's 2 strategies for how to do this as well. The little half sheet is one strategy. Well, actually, there's three strategies. So the half sheet is one, and then you have this, which is called Tap It Stripped, and you see that it's an acronym for what you look at a poem. And then there's one more, which is called TP Cast, and it's another way to analyze poetry, and it tells you what to go through. So all these things are important when we're looking at poetry. Poetry is the most difficult piece of literature to break down because, again, there's so much going on in such a tiny little space that people often freak out about it. So I need you to make sure that you know the terms that are on these papers. You're familiar with the strategies for breaking it down, particularly the half sheet and these other ones like the TP Cast and Tap It Stripped. And I want you to be very familiar with those poetic devices. When we come back, we're going to look at some poems. I'm going to give you a little bit more practice on scansion, and then we're really going to break these things down. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me at Mrs. Harbison, MRSHARBISON @Yahoo, so that way I see it on my email. And enjoy the rest of your break. Be familiar with these things for poetry, and I will see you next Monday. And don't forget to do your collaborized classroom and 2 journal entries. All right, see you guys on Monday.